Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Paranormal Stories video. Today, we're diving into 4 true paranormal cases that are absolutely insane, but nobody talks about. These aren't your typical Amityville or Conjuring stories. These are lesser-known cases with more evidence, more witnesses, and more horror than the famous ones. We're talking about a man attacked on camera 11 times in one night, a ghost who literally testified in court and got her murderer convicted, a 3-year poltergeist attack that makes Enfield look tame, and a figure that stood in a kid's closet every single night for months. These stories are documented, they're terrifying, and for some reason, they're hidden. So you'll definitely want to stick around for this one. And please smash that like button and subscribe. It helps more than you know. This is going to be a long one, so sit back, relax, and let's get into some true paranormal horror that nobody talks about. My name is Tony Pickman, and what happened to me, my wife Deborah, and our newborn son in the Sallie house in Atchison, Kansas, is the reason it's now known as one of America's most violently haunted locations. I'm telling this story because people need to understand that what we experienced wasn't just ghost stories or folklore. It was real, documented, violent paranormal activity that physically harmed me and forced us to abandon our home in terror. In 1992, Deborah and I were newlyweds. She was pregnant with our first child. We needed a place to live and found a small Victorian house at 508 North 2nd Street in Atchison, Kansas. The house was built between 1867 and 1871. It was charming, affordable, and seemed perfect for starting our family. The landlord didn't mention anything about the house being haunted. We had no idea what we were moving into. The house had a tragic history, though we didn't learn this until later. According to local legend, the house had once belonged to a doctor who used the first floor as his medical practice. One day, a mother rushed in carrying her 6-year-old daughter named Sallie. The girl had collapsed from severe abdominal pain. The doctor diagnosed appendicitis and knew surgery was needed immediately or she would die. But there was a problem. The doctor didn't have proper anesthesia. He started the surgery anyway, cutting into Sallie's abdomen while she was awake and screaming in pain. The little girl died on the operating table, terrified and in agony, believing the doctor was torturing her rather than trying to save her. Whether this story is literally true or embellished folklore, something terrible happened in that house, and whatever remained was angry. For the first few months after we moved in with our newborn son Taylor, things seemed normal. Then small, strange things started happening. Toys in Taylor's nursery would rearrange themselves. We'd put them away before bed and find them in different positions in the morning, arranged in specific patterns like someone had been playing with them. Deborah thought maybe I was sleepwalking and moving things. I thought maybe she was doing it and forgetting. We both tried to rationalize it, but then things got more aggressive. I started waking up with scratches on my chest and arms, 3 parallel scratches, like claw marks. They'd appear overnight while I was sleeping. Deborah never had a scratch on her, neither did Taylor, just me, always me. At first, I thought maybe I was scratching myself in my sleep, but the scratches were too deep, too deliberate, and they were always in places I couldn't easily reach, my back, my shoulder blades. Once, 3 scratches appeared perfectly across my chest, each one about 6 inches long. Then the burns started. I'd wake up with burn marks on my skin, not like I'd touched something hot, more like someone had pressed a cigarette or hot iron against me while I slept. Small, circular burns that blistered and scarred. I have no explanation for them. Deborah was in bed next to me all night. There was nothing hot near the bed. The burns just appeared. The house started feeling hostile toward me specifically. When I'd enter certain rooms, especially the nursery and what we believed was the old operating room on the first floor, the temperature would drop dramatically. My breath would become visible. This was Kansas in summer. There was no reason for rooms to suddenly become freezing cold only when I entered them. Objects would move when I was nearby. Picture frames would fall off walls as I walked past. Doors would slam shut in my face. Once, a heavy mirror fell off the wall and nearly hit me. These things never happened to Deborah, only me. We started researching the house and learned about Sallie and the tragic surgery. Some locals told us the ghost didn't like men, specifically because a male doctor had caused her death. That's why I was being targeted, and Deborah and Taylor were left alone. Things escalated to the point where we couldn't ignore it anymore. We contacted paranormal investigators. A TV show called Sightings came to film an episode about our experiences in 1994. During the filming, I was attacked on camera. The crew was filming me in the nursery when suddenly I felt burning pain across my chest. I lifted my shirt and fresh scratches were appearing on my skin in real time. The camera crew filmed it happening. You could see the scratches forming, blood welling up, while I stood there doing nothing.
The investigators found letters carved into my back during another session. MC was scratched deep into my skin. They later discovered these were the initials of Michael Croman Finney, the original builder of the house, who died there in 1872. That night, the paranormal team documented 11 separate attacks on me. The lead investigator, who'd been doing this for years, said he'd never seen anything like it. I was being physically assaulted by something invisible while multiple cameras, investigators, and my wife watched helplessly. Fires started breaking out in the house, small fires, like something was trying to burn the place down. A curtain would suddenly ignite for no reason. Candles we hadn't lit would be burning. We'd find scorch marks on furniture. Our dog would bark at empty corners and refuse to enter certain rooms. The worst part was the psychological toll. I started having blackouts. I'd lose time and not remember what happened. Deborah said during these blackouts, I'd act strange, aggressive, like I wasn't myself. She was terrified I might hurt her or Taylor while in that state. I felt like something was trying to possess me, or at least control me. I'd have violent urges I'd never experienced before. I'd think thoughts that weren't mine. I felt an overwhelming rage directed at Deborah and Taylor, which horrified me because I loved them more than anything. We tried everything. We had the house blessed by priests, we smudged it with sage, we brought in psychics who claimed to communicate with multiple spirits in the house. They said Sallie was there, but she wasn't the violent one. There was something darker, an adult female spirit who was filled with grief and anger, possibly Sallie's mother, who was also rumored to have died in the house. Nothing worked. The attacks continued. I was being scratched, burned, and psychologically tormented daily. I couldn't sleep. I was afraid to be in my own home. In October 1994, after about 18 months of this nightmare, we made the decision to leave. We abandoned our lease, lost our security deposit, and moved out in the middle of the night. We couldn't stay there anymore. It was literally killing me. The house has been empty since we left. It's now a tourist attraction. People pay to take tours and spend the night there. Hundreds of paranormal investigators have documented activity. Electronic voice phenomena, temperature fluctuations, objects moving on camera, shadow figures, all the same things we experienced.
Other visitors, especially men, report being scratched and attacked. Dogs refuse to enter the nursery. Batteries drain instantly, equipment malfunctions. Multiple people have captured what they believe to be the apparition of a little girl. The Sallie house has been featured on Ghost Adventures, Paranormal Witness, and numerous other shows. It's gained a reputation as one of the most actively haunted and dangerous locations in America. Deborah and I wrote a book about our experiences called The Sallie House Haunting, A True Story. We wanted to document everything that happened to us because skeptics accused us of making it up for attention. But we have scars. We have video evidence. We have testimony from investigators who witnessed attacks happen in real time. I still have nightmares about that house. I still have scars from the scratches and burns, and I still don't fully understand what happened to us. Was it the ghost of a little girl, her grieving mother, something demonic using their story as a cover? I don't know. What I do know is that house is dangerous. Whatever is in there hates men and will physically attack them. If you ever visit Atchison, Kansas, and someone offers to let you tour the Sallie house, think very carefully about whether you want to experience what I experienced. My name is Mary Jane Heaster, and I'm telling you about the most unusual murder case in American legal history. This is the case where my daughter's ghost testified in court and helped convict her killer. I know how that sounds, but this actually happened. It's documented in court records. The ghost of my daughter appeared to me night after night until I understood how she was murdered, and because of what she told me, her killer was convicted and hanged. My daughter's name was Elva Zona Heaster Shue. Everyone called her Zona. She was 23 years old, beautiful, full of life. In October 1896, she married a man named Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue. We all called him Edward or Trout. He'd recently moved to Greenbrier County from another part of West Virginia. I didn't trust Edward from the moment I met him. There was something off about him. He was charming on the surface, but I could see darkness beneath. Zona was so in love she didn't see it. They married quickly and moved into a small house. On January 23, 1897, just 3 months after the wedding, a young boy who ran errands for the Shues was sent to their house. He was supposed to ask Zona if she needed anything from town. When he entered the house, he found Zona's body at the bottom of the stairs. She was lying there, dead, her head tilted at an odd angle. The boy ran to get help. Edward came home shortly after. When people arrived, Edward was cradling Zona's body, hysterical with grief. He'd dressed her in a high-necked dress with a stiff collar and a big scarf wrapped around her neck. He'd styled her hair and put a pillow under her head. When the doctor arrived to examine the body, Edward wouldn't leave Zona's side. He held her head and sobbed, preventing the doctor from doing a thorough examination. The doctor could barely check for injuries because Edward was so protective of the body, especially around the neck and head area. The doctor, George Knapp, did a cursory examination and determined Zona had died from everlasting faint with some complications from pregnancy. It was a vague diagnosis. Dr. Knapp later admitted he suspected foul play, but couldn't prove it during his limited examination. Edward's behavior had been too controlling, too protective of specific areas of Zona's body. Zona was buried quickly. At the funeral, Edward's behavior was strange. He wouldn't let anyone near the coffin. He kept adjusting the scarf around her neck. Several people noticed that when they tried to pay respects and look at Zona's body, her head moved loosely, as if her neck was broken. I went to the local prosecutor, John Preston. I told him everything my daughter's ghost had told me. I expected him to laugh at me or dismiss me as a crazy, grieving mother, but he didn't. He listened carefully to every detail. There were already rumors and suspicions about Edward. People had witnessed his strange behavior at the funeral. Dr. Knapp had expressed doubts about his original diagnosis. My testimony about Zona's ghost, as strange as it was, provided enough reason for Preston to order an exhumation and proper autopsy. Zona's body was dug up 6 weeks after burial. Dr. Knapp performed a thorough examination, this time without Edward interfering. What he found confirmed everything Zona's ghost had told me. There were clear marks on Zona's neck indicating strangulation, finger-shaped bruises where Edward had gripped her throat. Her windpipe was crushed. Most significantly, her neck was broken. The first and second vertebrae were separated, and the ligaments were torn. Her neck had been violently snapped, exactly as Zona's ghost had described. Dr. Knapp testified that Zona had been strangled and her neck had been deliberately broken. This was no accident. This was murder. Edward was arrested and charged with murder. The trial became a sensation. Everyone was talking about the ghost testimony. Would the court allow me to testify about what my daughter's ghost had told me? Would it be admissible? When I took the stand, Edward's defense attorney tried to discredit me. He asked me repeatedly about the ghost. He tried to make me sound insane or foolish. He questioned me for hours, trying to get me to contradict myself or admit I'd made it up, but I didn't waver. I told the truth about what Zona's spirit had told me, night after night. I described details about the murder that I couldn't have known any other way, and my testimony aligned perfectly with the autopsy findings. The prosecution was careful not to rely solely on ghost testimony. They built a strong case using the physical evidence from the autopsy, witness testimony about Edward's suspicious behavior, and background information they'd uncovered about Edward's past.
It turned out Edward had been married twice before Zona. His first wife had divorced him. His second wife had died under mysterious circumstances. Edward had a history of violence against women. The jury deliberated for just over an hour. They found Edward Shue guilty of murder in the first degree. He was sentenced to life in prison. After the trial, some newspapers reported the verdict was based on ghost testimony. Headlines called it the Greenbrier ghost case, or the case of the woman who testified from beyond the grave. Technically, the conviction was based on physical evidence, but my testimony about what Zona's ghost told me was what led to the exhumation and proper autopsy. Edward served his sentence at the West Virginia State Penitentiary. He died there in 1900, just 3 years after Zona's murder. The Greenbrier ghost case is the only known instance in American legal history where testimony from a ghost helped solve a murder and convict a killer. It's documented in official court records. The case file is preserved. Historians have verified every detail. Some people try to explain it away by saying I must have suspected Edward all along, and my ghost visits were just my subconscious mind processing my suspicions. But that doesn't explain how I knew such specific details about the broken neck and strangulation before the autopsy. I believe my daughter's spirit visited me because she wanted justice. She couldn't rest while her murderer walked free. She needed someone to know the truth, and she chose her mother. After Edward's conviction, Zona never appeared to me again. I think she finally found peace, knowing her killer had been brought to justice. But I'll never forget those 4 nights when my murdered daughter came back from the grave to tell me what had been done to her. The Greenbrier ghost case remains one of the most fascinating and well-documented paranormal cases in American history. Not because of what it tells us about ghosts, but because it shows that sometimes the dead find a way to speak, and sometimes we need to listen. My name is Jean Pritchard, though when these events happened, my last name was Scholes. I'm the mother who lived through what's known as the Black Monk of Ponterfract haunting, or the Ponterfract poltergeist. I'm telling this story because it nearly destroyed us, and the entity we dealt with was genuinely malevolent. In August 1966, my family lived at 30 East Drive in Pontefract, Yorkshire. It was me, my husband Joe, and our 2 children, Philip, who was 15, and Diane, who was 12. It was an ordinary semi-detached council house. Nothing about it seemed unusual or haunted. The activity began when Joe and I went on holiday and left the kids with their grandmother. Philip and Diane were upstairs when they felt a strange cold breeze moving through the house. It was late August, warm outside, but the temperature inside dropped dramatically. Then white powder started falling from the air like snow, just drifting down from nowhere, coating the stairs. Diane's grandmother thought maybe there was a crack in the ceiling and dust was falling through, but when they investigated, there was no crack.
the powder was just appearing out of thin air. Water started pooling on the kitchen floor, not from a leak or spill. Water would just appear in puddles. They'd mop it up, and more would appear. The source couldn't be found. Then objects started moving. Small items at first, tea towels, ornaments, nothing too dramatic. But when Joe and I came home from holiday and the kids told us what had happened, we thought they were exaggerating or playing pranks. Then we witnessed it ourselves. We'd hear loud bangs and crashes from upstairs when no one was up there. We'd run up to check and find furniture overturned. Philip's bedroom was particularly active. His wardrobe would shake violently, drawers would fly open, clothes would be thrown around the room. One of the first truly frightening incidents involved our daughter, Diane. She was lying in bed when she felt something grab her hair and pull her up. An invisible force lifted her by her hair, dragging her across the bed. She was screaming, struggling, and we could see her hair being pulled upward by nothing. Joe had to physically pull her back down.
After that, the activity became more aggressive and more frequent. We'd hear footsteps walking through the house at night, heavy footsteps, like a grown man in boots, but no one was there. Objects would fly across rooms, not fall, fly, as if thrown by someone with considerable strength. Plates would shoot off shelves and smash against walls. Pictures would tear themselves off the wall and hurl across the room. Philip was pushed down the stairs by an invisible force. He swore someone shoved him hard from behind, but when he turned to look, no one was there. He tumbled down the entire staircase and was lucky not to be seriously injured. The entity seemed to particularly target Diane.
She was 12 years old, right at puberty, which is common in poltergeist cases. The force would grab her, drag her, push her. Once she was lifted into the air and held there, suspended, while we watched helplessly. Then the writing appeared. Words would be scratched into surfaces, furniture, walls. Sometimes they appeared to be scraped or gouged into the surface. Other times they'd be written in the white powder that kept appearing. The messages were disturbing, violent, threats. The entity identified itself, or at least a name appeared repeatedly, Monk, and later, more specifically, Friedrich. We researched the history of the area and discovered something chilling.
The house was built on land that had once been part of a medieval priory. In the 16th century, during the dissolution of the monasteries, a Cluniac monk had been hanged for raping and murdering a young girl. His name was recorded in historical documents. Some locals believed the hanged monk's spirit still haunted the area where the gibbet had stood, right where our house was now located. Whether the entity was really this monk or was just using that identity to frighten us, it certainly fit the pattern. It was malevolent, violent, and seemed to have a particular interest in our adolescent daughter. Similar to the monk's documented crimes centuries before, objects weren't just thrown around randomly. They were aimed at people. A heavy candlestick flew across the room and hit Philip in the head, leaving a nasty gash. Kitchen knives would fly point first at family members. We were being attacked. The Black Monk, as we came to call it, would also manifest physically. Multiple people saw a dark figure in the house, not a detailed apparition, but a black shadow in the shape of a man, wearing what looked like a hooded robe, like a monk's habit. It would appear in doorways, in corners, on the stairs, silent, watching. Joe tried to fight back. He's a practical man, not prone to superstition. He'd try to grab the objects that were flying and throw them back. He'd yell at the entity, but nothing worked. If anything, the attacks got worse when he tried to resist. We brought in clergy to bless the house. The first priest who came was so frightened by what he witnessed that he refused to continue. Objects flew at him. The temperature dropped so low he could see his breath. He heard growling sounds. He left and wouldn't come back. Another priest was more determined. He performed multiple blessings and prayers. For a while, the activity would calm down, but it always came back, usually worse than before. Investigators came to document the activity. Colin Wilson, a well-known writer on the paranormal, investigated the case. Photographs were taken showing objects mid-flight. Recordings captured strange sounds, including what sounded like breathing and footsteps when no one was there. My name is Rebecca, and what I'm about to tell you happened when I was 7 years old. This isn't a famous case. It's never been investigated or documented beyond my family's experience, but it happened and it terrified me and my younger brother for months. This is the story of the man in our closet. In 1967, my family lived in a house in Brisbane, Queensland. It was a typical Australian weatherboard house, elevated on stumps to protect against flooding. My brother James was 5, and I was 7. We shared a bedroom at the back of the house. One night, I woke up for some reason. I don't know what woke me. Maybe a sound, maybe just instinct. But when I opened my eyes, I saw someone standing in the doorway of our closet. It was a man, tall, thin, wearing what looked like old-fashioned clothing, dark trousers and a light-colored shirt. His face was in shadow, so I couldn't see his features clearly, but I could see his outline perfectly. He was just standing there in the closet, completely still, facing our beds. I was frozen with fear. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just lay there staring at him, hoping he'd go away or that I was dreaming. After what felt like forever but was probably only a minute, I closed my eyes tight and pulled the blanket over my head. When I got the courage to look again, he was gone. The next morning, I told my parents. They said I'd had a nightmare. They checked the closet to show me there was nothing there, just clothes and shoes. They told me to forget about it. But the next night, he was back. Same position, same stillness, standing in the closet doorway, facing us. This time, James woke up too. He saw the man and started crying. That's what finally made me able to move and scream for our parents. They came running in. The man was gone by the time they got there. Again, they checked the closet. Nothing. They thought we were having shared nightmares or playing some kind of game. But he kept appearing, night after night after night, always in the closet, always standing, always facing us, never moving, never making a sound, just watching. James and I started refusing to sleep in that room. We'd sleep on the floor in our parents' room or on the couch, but our parents would make us go back to our own beds. They didn't believe us. They thought we were making excuses to avoid bedtime. One night, our father decided to sleep in our room to prove there was nothing there. James and I were moved to our parents' bed for the night. In the morning, Dad looked shaken. He wouldn't tell us exactly what happened, but he never made us sleep in that room again. Years later, after I was grown, I asked him what he'd seen that night. He finally told me he'd seen the man too, standing in the closet, watching. Dad had tried to approach him, thinking maybe someone had broken into the house. But as he got closer, the figure faded away, just slowly became more and more transparent until it was gone. After that night, my parents let us move to a different bedroom in the house. The old bedroom was turned into storage. They nailed the closet shut. We never used that room again. Before we moved out of that house a few years later, my mother did some research. She talked to the previous owners and neighbors. She learned that a man had hanged himself in the garage of our property in the 1940s, before the current house was even built. She also discovered that our bedroom was built roughly where an old outhouse or storage shed had been. Some older neighbors remembered the property from decades earlier. One elderly woman said she'd heard stories that someone had died on that property, though she didn't know the details. Whether the man in our closet was the spirit of someone who died there, we'll never know for certain, but James and I both remember him clearly. The same figure, the same position, night after night. Our father saw him too. I'm 60 years old now. I've spent decades trying to rationalize what we experienced. Maybe it was sleep paralysis. Maybe it was childhood imagination. Maybe it was some optical illusion caused by shadows and moonlight. But none of those explanations account for the fact that 3 different people, 2 children and an adult, saw the exact same figure in the same location, behaving the same way. We didn't compare notes beforehand. We all independently described the same man. The memory of the closet man has never left me. To this day, I sleep with closet doors firmly closed. I can't have them open at night, and sometimes, when I'm in that state between waking and sleeping, I think I see a tall figure standing somewhere in my peripheral vision, watching, silent, just like he did when I was 7. I don't tell this story often. It's not dramatic, like famous hauntings. There were no objects flying or voices speaking. Just a silent figure who appeared every night for months, watching 2 children sleep, but that somehow makes it worse. The passive, patient stalking, the sense that something was always there, in the closet, waiting for darkness to fall so it could stand and stare at us. That's my paranormal experience, the man in the closet who terrorized my childhood and who I've never been able to forget or explain. The Sallie house in Kansas still operates as a haunted attraction where visitors report the same violent attacks. The Greenbrier ghost case remains the only murder conviction aided by ghost testimony in U.S. legal history. The Black Monk of Ponterfract terrorized a family for 3 years before vanishing, and the Closet Man was witnessed by 3 family members independently. If these obscure, true paranormal cases gave you chills, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Comment below which story disturbed you most, and check out my other videos for more documented horror. Remember, these events happened to real people and changed their lives forever.